On today's show, we are discussing what Cavaliers are the most important for winning games this season, the 2022-23 season. It's our spin on player rankings. We'll dive into all angles of that on today's show. I want to thank you, by the way, for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs and the NBA at large for places like Diamond UPROXX and Estimations for the Sword. My co-host is Evan Dammarell from Meta's Right Down Euclid, primarily. Evan, we're going to do some player ranking stuff today. Segment 2 is going to be us going through the big names on the Cavs roster, kind of organizing the top 4 and just saying who is really going to drive winning the most this year. Segment 3 is kind of who matters most outside the core 4. The impetus of this episode is really kind of, I guess, our like sort of twist on player rankings. Obviously, ESPN did their NBA rank this week. CBS has one up as well. Evan, let's just have a little bit of a meta conversation about NBA rankings, if you can indulge me for a second on this, because I get why they exist. I also find them to be, more often than not, a very sort of silly exercise that people spend way too much time getting like annoyed about.
Yeah, it's up there with whenever Madden ratings or like NBA 2K ratings are out. I mean, the only time I can really think of a player taking it personally is when Darius Garland said he's no longer the worst player in the league because he was citing an article from his rookie season and like analytics and advanced metrics said he was statistically one of the worst players in the league. But there's not much you can really make out of it. People who, what Chris is referencing is the ESPN rankings with like Darius Garland being 10 spots lower than Evan Mobley. A lot of people were kind of shocked by that, and I think you can understand the argument. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but at the same time, it's that group of authors' opinions accumulated into one. It's okay if they disagree with you, and I think there's so much uncertainty in a game that feels like it's certain at times that's kind of the beauty of basketball at the end of the day too, is like we don't fully know like who is going to truly be Cleveland's like best or most important player. And yeah, I agree with you though. I think people who kind of get bent out of shape over this stuff are a little silly, but you know what, if it helps you get through the day-to-day grind of life, rock on. That's what I say too.
Yeah, so like I had a few minutes where like I did see like Maxey and LaMelo Ball over Garland, and I was just like, are we sure? Like, are we sure about this?
I think I saw that one, and then just kept scrolling.
Yeah, and then like I just realized I don't care. Like, I am Tommy Lee Jones in that gif. It's just like I'll throw my hands up and just tell you, like, this is not for me. Like, you can enjoy these. I'm not saying it's bad if you want to enjoy these and argue about them. I just think there's better consumptions of basketball, and I think in particular, like, I think it is more. I want actual basketball. I want to like get into the actual basketball of it. Let's see who's actually performing well. Let's not guess at it. Let's just like kind of into wins. And look, I think you're right in saying that like these things, it's not clean. Like it is not. These things are not like yes, there. I think it becomes clear when there are like tiers of the very, very, very best players. I mean, you kind of can tell the difference there via like watching, via numbers, via whatever the combination of both. I also think at a certain point, a lot of this is gray, and it's based on the human part of it and circumstantial stuff, and like all these different elements that like are into more of this than, it's more than just, okay, Anthony Edwards is 25. Like, it's just these things are jumbled, and I think that's part of the fun.
Yeah, it's part of the fun, and I think I understand your annoyance and maybe just like your general curmudgeonness about these rankings, but at least it generates a discussion where we can have an episode like this where we can kind of hopefully create a healthy discourse where we can kind of make an argument or for or against any of these core four players, and then also Karis LeVert and Kevin Love, who made the list as well. Like, there's a lot of fun discussion to be had because you and I are kind of storyboarding this our episode a little bit, and what we both kind of agreed on is like you can make an argument at least for the top four guys. I mean, clearly there's like a fourth best one here at the end, at least in your eyes. But
well, okay, but even that, it is like I don't even think
you can make an argument for who's like the most impactful. Who you could also make an argument. Okay, maybe I don't agree with that either.
Yeah, and like I think it depends on how you frame these discussions. Like, is it in terms of like, okay, like is it upside? Is it just like pure one for one skill? Is it like how a certain player? In my case, so it's like, okay, what is like actually if certain players hit a certain level, what does that mean for how many games you're going to win and how good this team's going to be? I think in that instance, I think like 1 is 4. I also think and there's the sense of like. Certain guys are just like, it's also just like guys are better at certain things and how these things kind of fall in contextually. And like even with these rankings, Evan, and I think one of the things I hope we can try to do for people that watch and listen to the show today is like, not all of these rankings are like this, but like I always used to find like particularly when Golliver and Mahoney did them, the SI rankings, I feel like I could read that top 100 and like really learn about the players in that list and sort of understand what makes them tick, what makes them valuable at this moment in time for this NBA season, right? I don't always like find that to be the case when people approach these. I want to go into something like that and like feel like I'm understanding why this person is here and like why this person is providing value. And I think that if we're going to do rankings, I almost think it's like trying to just do the best job we can of like describing why some of these players are really, really good. Like I in the Mitchell ranking, on ESPN, he's 24 in their top 100. The two things they wrote about were like the fact that he's a new face in a new place, something people already know, and then it's also like it's one game to watch, and they pick the game where the first time the Cavs play in New York. I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, it's just like, what are we doing with this? It's just like let's dive into like let's talk about the actual basketball.
Yeah, I mean, it's Knicks for clicks at the end of the day, too. Like, I think that's going to generate buzz and everything else. Like, you have the Cleveland fan base insecurity, because I kind of wrote about this during his intro presser when Mitchell was kind of pressed on the fact that after he admitted he expected to be traded to New York, like, there's going to always be that negative voice outside of the organization. So when the team kind of looks rocky or when they fail, there's going to be people who say, like, oh, Donovan Mitchell's going to go to New York, even though there's a 3-year window where the Cavs can kind of work with them. And if it really blows up in their face, yeah, they'll cross that bridge when they come to it. But yeah, I just think that game's a little questionable. Like, I could pull other matchups out of my rear end if I wanted to. Like, I could say the Cavs when they play the Jazz in Utah for the first time. I think when they play Minnesota, that's more interesting because you're going to see Rudy Gobert against Donovan Mitchell, and also just like the Wolves versus the Cavs are an interesting matchup too because they play with 2 big men in their lineups as well. So there's a lot of more compelling storylines and things like that, but I also just empathize for a little bit with the writers just because they have to rank 100 players. And I think like if you had to like write like a full like dichotomy on a lot of these players, like you'd be spending all day like a story per player at this point.
Yes. And again, I'm asking we're asking I am at least asking for let's just like I think just talk about basketball. Okay. After the break, we're gonna go through the big names in the Cavs roster. We're gonna go through the top 4. After
we dumped on the idea of ranking players, we're going to rank players, and our answers are the definitive ones.
Well, the idea of our rankings, should just say before we're going to break, is like we're going to decide like who we kind of think is ultimately going to be driving, not just who is like better, like who we're going to say is better, because that can be subjective. I think like even if you just talk to people on the internet about basketball, there are people that have like very strong feelings about like anything. That's just how this works. I think what we are going to try to outline is just sort of like, okay, these are the guys we know are the best players on the team. The history kind of and what their production to date and their upside shows that. Let's try to decide who is actually going to drive wins for 2022, 2023, not just who is better in a vacuum. So I'm hoping we're trying this out in real time. I'm hoping that it is at least somewhat more productive than what you might be able to find out there. Okay, after the break, we're going to start that with Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen in some order. But first, going to tell everyone about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting and sports for pro and college football this season and all seasons. Find all of the latest league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. BetOnline is also your continued source for really everything in sports wagering, including live betting, esports, and scores. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. And soon, and the NBA will be back, and I'm sure people, if you're listening to this podcast, are interested in NBA. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. For instance, Evan Mobley is plus 1,600 to win Defensive Player of the Year. The Cavs over-under, meanwhile, is at 46.5 after they got Donovan Mitchell in a trade from the Utah Jazz. BetOnline, that's where the game starts. Go check them out today and check out all their great NBA odds. If you want an NBA odd, I'm sure you can find it over at BetOnline. All right, back here in Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. Evan, let's try to put these 4 big-name, 4-star players in the Cavs into some order. So Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland. I think I have Allen fourth for this reason. Allen, we know what he's going to do. He's going to be really, really good at it. I don't suspect there's like another level coming. I don't suspect like what he does.
You can make that argument.
Even if he just is kind of what he was last year, kind of drives more and more wins this year. Maybe the health part of it, but like I think that's the case for really all of these guys. It just, are they going to be healthy? That's kind of an independent thing to me. He is just like the most stable of these 4 to me. And in terms of like if they have a great season, hit their best possible season, that drives games. I think to me and how I'm thinking about this, that just kind of puts it at 4th.
I agree with you. I wrote about this for Allen's season preview for Fear the Sword, where there's some things he can do because, yes, he's 26. He's still part of this young core, and I still think there's some stuff he can tap into just as a player, offensively, defensively, both ends of the floor. That could kind of just elevate his game a little bit. There's obviously ways he can improve as well, but he's going to be the most consistent player out of like this quote-unquote core 4 for the Cavs next season. At least I would say so, because Jared Allen is what we know what he is at this point. He is a low-usage, hyper efficient big man who is an elite rim protector and also just a very good lob threat, a very good pick and roll partner. He showed you some interesting stuff as perimeter defense goes. Like maybe there's just a little bit more there, but what we know what he is, like, and also because he's so low usage, makes him the 4th guy on this totem pole, just because like you're not going to get a ton of offensive production at him like you would Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell or what we expect Evan Mobley to be as well. And the Evan Mobley thing is really interesting as well, because if Mobley takes a dramatic leap in year 2, but maybe let's just say year 3 at this point, like he really separates himself from Allen too, because if Mobley feels comfortable playing the 5 and he's able to be a bit more interchangeable and multifaceted, like I'm not saying the Cavs are looking to trade Jared Allen, but he could become an expendable trade piece for them as well too, where the Cavs, I'm stirring the pot a little bit here, but I'm just saying, I agree with your argument, but I just think it's because he's such a low usage big man and he's just kind of consistent and we know who he is as a player, but there's still room for improvement, but like there's not going to be much left for him to kind of round things out. I think it's just going to be improved rim protection numbers, better offensive rebounding numbers, and just this more 3-point heavy offense the Cavs might start employing, and then obviously just getting better as he kind of hits the early beginnings of his prime.
So Darius Garland was the answer to this question for me last year. If you were at the end of the season, we had done this exercise. He was number 1.
There was a lot of uncertainty about Garland last year too. We didn't know what he could be.
Well, but I mean, when we got to the end of the year and we saw just how they functioned, I think it was very clearly like this dude is number 1 with like why they functioned so much last year. Like he was so much of the reason why the offense worked, why they kept winning the way they did, why they kind of did enough. And like Evan, I kind of want to like, and I look at it this year, and it's like it's hard for me to like not just want to put him back there based on what he did, but it's also just like Mitchell is this new dynamic, and there is something about the new with him, right? Yeah. And we know I think like if we were to say who is the best player on this team right now, I think it's Donovan Mitchell. So like, and like he's right. I'm saying right now he's 26 in his prime, has proven it. It's not Evan Mobley yet.
No, I was going to say it's Darius Garland.
I don't know if it's Darius. Mitchell just has like a longer track record of doing this.
That's the fair hole you can poke in my argument. It's just I'm banking off him going nuclear in year 3, and him just hitting year 3 is when he went nuclear, but year 4, like, he's gonna have to build off the success that he had, and he's gonna become even better. I'm talking about Garland right now, not Mitchell.
I know.
So that's where I'm just kind of at, where I'm like, okay, holy cow, Darius Garland was the Cavs' best player at the end of last season. I don't think that's changed much because he's only going to get better. That's where my argument is, where you can make the case that he is the most impactful player for the Cavs. And in terms of winning, at least, like, we saw it clear as day when his back was acting up last year, and then Ricky Rubio went down, and we had to watch Kevin Pangos and Rajon Rondo take turns at point guard. Like, the Cavs cratered as a team, and you watched them go from a top 2, top 3 team record-wise in the East all the way down to a play-in team because Garland just couldn't stay healthy and stay right. And I think that really speaks volumes to just how much of the fact that he's kind of Nash-esque in that regard, where the Cavs offense just didn't click last season if Darius Garland wasn't playing serious minutes at the point and just kind of facilitating things and running the whole show.
Yeah, and I think Mitchell's going to come in and I think like take the pressure off him to have to do all that somehow, and that's like an interesting.
That's fair.
Like give and take. If we're looking at like who could be the like. Who I kind of want to put one just to be a little spicy and say that like if they have their nuclear leap and all this stuff, it's Evan Mobley. If Evan Mobley like ascends in a if he ascends in a very major way and like the defense hits like another level and he's like clearly all defense, if the offense becomes like a thing where it's like you feel really good about him in offense instead of just like him being kind of at times, and like then having some good moments, obviously, but overall being a kind of more defensive oriented player in a lot of ways, and a special one at that. I kind of think like if he ascends like this, I think he's the guy that if we're dictating the ceiling of what this team is, he's the guy that can take them from like a level that I think we can look at them now coming into the year, which is like maybe like 50 wins and top 4 and being really competitive to like a team that maybe they're pushing for something earlier than we expected. He is the swing piece in that.
Yeah, he is the swing piece. I don't know if in year 2 I can fully say that, because you, again, smartly put this when we had Martin Rickman on just as like a live reaction to the Donovan Mitchell trade. This getting Donovan Mitchell takes a lot of the offensive pressure off Evan Mobley to kind of like be ready to go, like, and just more of like a threat on the offensive end instead of just like having a very, very basic package in terms of what his offensive repertoire is. And like, it's just so raw and unrefined right now that, yeah, defensively he could be super elite. Like, I think he is going to be elite on that end of the floor in his second year. I think he is going to be an all-defensive candidate. I think he could be maybe in running defensive player of the year, depending on how the Cavs season goes overall, just because like he has that toolkit and he's so multifaceted as a defender overall to begin with, that I think that's just makes Evan Mobley so intriguing. But I'm just willing to give him the runway to prove me wrong, because yeah, we've seen all the open gym workouts of him hitting threes and things like that, but I just need to see it in a game. Like, Evan Mobley comes out with like a very reliable jumper in his bag, where like he's a trailer in fast break scenarios where the Cavs began to get set on offense, and he's able to hit a quick three, and he keeps defenses honest. Like, this Cavs offense is going to be pretty lethal next year. Like, let's just be honest, because they will have 3 shooters on the floor in their starting lineup, and then starting Isaac Okoro or Karis LeVert's a lot more palatable too. And there's just a lot of interesting ways the Cavs could go about this, but I think that's also, again, to your point, when they got Donovan Mitchell, it doesn't really put the onus on Evan Mobley to say, like, okay, he averaged 13, 14 points his rookie season, if I remember correctly, per game. You don't need to have like such a dramatic leap, like you're going from that volume to possibly flirting with almost 20 points per game on a night, because like we need more out of you, because the most you're going to get out of Jarrett Allen is 16, 17, 18 points per game, and Darius Garland's going to be 20 to 25 points per night as well too. So like you need to get more offensive production somewhere, and like they're going to turn Evan Mobley. Now that Mitchell's here, you don't really need to turn Evan Mobley that quickly and say like, okay, we need you to really go out there and be a gangbuster on offense and defense for us.
I would really like to see one game this year where Mobley just like is like the offensive lead. If like Mitchell has a night off or whatever, I would just if like there's even a game where he just asserts himself in the way, I think that would be really fascinating. That's a Mobley podcast discussion.
My apologies. He averaged 15 points per game his rookie season. I was off by 1 to 2 points. Just My apologies to the Mobley family and their future house and dynasties.
All right, after the break, we're going to put these four in order and then just do a quick whip around on some of the edge guys on the roster. All right, back here in Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell.
Sorry, just the first three words of your note. Windler is dead. Just...
Yes, my outlines. Okay, so let's put these four in order.
Let's do it.
I think Allen's 4.
We're in agreement on that. Yes,
okay,
we're in agreement on that.
You put up a name next. I took the coward's way out and picked the one that I knew we'd have to have a disagreement on.
I'm going to go Evan Mobley with a big old asterisk next to it, and then I'm going to go Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland.
So you're putting... So Mobley is 1, Mitchell is 2, Garland is 3, Allen is 4.
No. In reverse order, so it's Allen, Mobley, Mitchell, Garland. With a big old asterisk next to Evan Mobley, where, like, if he does have a pretty dramatic leap, I'm happy to eat crow and say, yes, he's... Like, I think I am more confident in saying that he's going to be Cleveland's best player in the next several seasons. Let's just say 2 seasons tops. And then, like, he takes the Cavs to new heights. But I don't know if he's quite ready to do that yet, just because he has a long way to go offensively.
I would swap Mitchell and Garland, but I think I agree. Just because of the Mitchell track record part of it.
That's fair.
Like,
that's fair.
Maybe just because it's new, maybe just because all the picks they give up and whatever. But I'm fascinated. The more and more we get closer to basketball, actual basketball, I'm very excited to just see what his impact sort of is in this context. Because I think the structure is just different than Utah, and I think that is something we'll talk about. We're gonna have Andy Bailey on from Bleacher Report, who knows the Jazz maybe better than anyone aside from like David Locke.
He's the only NBA Twitter member who could probably kick your butt in basketball because he played college hoops.
Yeah, it's like him and Adam Matas, or I would like want like as my first 2 picks in like a NBA Twitter like pickup game. So like he's gonna come on, we're gonna talk about that, and we're also gonna do a Mitchell season preview. But like one of the things they made today that I'm sort of gonna I think ask about is just like, okay, like the Jazz just play differently than you. Like what does Mitchell look like in this context? Is the crux of sort of arguing. But okay, let's zip around the edge of this roster outside of the core 4.
Let's do it.
Here are the guys I think we have to talk about considering we're tight on time. Okoro, Love, LeVert, and Rubio. Is there anyone not on there that you feel like I should have put in there?
No, if you're going 9 deep, those are your 9 guys at the end of the day. It's gonna, well, no, that's 8 deep because there's someone has to start with them too. So like that's your 8-man rotation right there. It's the 4 guys we've talked about for 10, 15 minutes, and then the 4 you just mentioned. So that's like your entire rotation when the team's fully healthy.
So I kind of wonder if like I might be like overthinking this like a little bit, but I think the clear 1 and 2 for me in some order is Love and Okoro. Love's the need for Love to do what he did last year and repeat it to a T is I think a little lessened post getting Mitchell, just because you added another offensive like unit to your team in a lot of ways, and a guy who's really going to do a lot for you in that way. Love's scoring impact though was just so vital for them last year, and the big buckets at big times was so vital that like I think they will still need that, especially I think because like the market and spacing options gone, and now Love's kind of your spacey big, so he's there. And Okoro's just look, they need really good minutes at the 3. He's the defensive option of that. I think he covered, and if he can improve in a meaningful way, like you're probably feeling a little better about your starting 5 than you might have otherwise. So I think it's them 2 for me, and with Caris LeVert, I just feel. I just am. He is maybe more than anyone else. Like whereas if we know what's up with Okoro and like know what he needs to do, I am very, very curious to just see what LeVert's kind of role looks like.
I'm curious as well. If you ask me for my rankings, I think Ricky Rubio is probably going to supplant either Kevin Love or Isaac Okoro, just because I'm hesitant to say Kevin Love's going to have the same production, especially when he doesn't really have Ricky Rubio to kind of snowball him. I mean, you saw his numbers kind of be a little consistent, but sometimes they dipped and went up and down a little bit when Rubio first went down, but found consistency with Garland and just the rest of the starting lineup too. But Karis LeVert is just a bit of an enigma for me because now that Donovan Mitchell's here, clearly the Cavs have shifted lanes. Like, I don't know what their plans are at this juncture. Like, I know they've pretty much hit pause on extension talks at this time with him. And maybe they're just going to wait and see how this season goes because there's a lot of uncertainty around him. He wasn't really fully healthy until the Cavs hit the play-in tournament when they played Atlanta, and that was their very last game of the season. And I've preached this a lot on the show where I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, let him have a offseason to get fully healthy in a full training camp, which is everything to get acclimated. But now it's just a little different because they have to get Donovan Mitchell more acclimated than Karis LeVert at this point. And yeah, it's obviously they're not going to be focusing on one player. They're going to be focusing on the entire team and the entire roster. But at the same time, it's just Karis LeVert, of those four guys you mentioned, is probably the most expendable of the bunch. And we talked about this with Martin after we finished recording, but if the Cavs can go find, like, let's say they go try and get Boss Man and they don't care about the vibes, and it costs them Karis LeVert in the process, like, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make because Jay Crowder makes a lot of sense as a starting three for the Cavs right now. But obviously, it's a little different too, but we'll see how it goes. But I think Karis LeVert's just the most tradable piece out of those four, obviously. I mean, he's on an expiring contract. He is a wing player who does have an interesting skill set. It's just as a team believe he's enough to push them over the edge, kind of like the Cavs believe that he was worth a first-round pick last season to kind of sustain this really good season they built. So, I don't know. We'll see what we get with him. He's just a bit of an enigma for me because I don't know what to expect because I'm shifting my focus now that Donovan Mitchell's in town.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's like, well, okay, so what if we're gonna, like, even with, I think this to an extent with Rubio too, but I think like Rubio, it's just like, I think there's just so many, there's vibes and what his track record is sort of a little bit different, that it's not like the same exact thing. But it's like LeVert, I'm sort of like wondering, like, okay, like let's say he ends up starting the season as the starting small forward. I'm like, I just like can't wrap my mind around like what that looks like. I don't think of LeVert as like a good cutter. I don't think of LeVert as like he's not a spot up 3-point shooter in an effective way. It's never been what he's been. Like Okoro, it's like you have to just hope like some of the stuff breaks differently. Love, you're just like, okay, tell with Rubio, it's kind of like, how does he look coming back from the ACL? It's LeVert, I am just like even the ball handling stuff. He doesn't have like his playmaking feel is like fine. It's not great. It's just kind of there. I am sort of curious to see like how does he function if it's like he's just kind of trying to do Karis LeVert stuff in this setting, and like does that help the Cavs? Does he become the guy where it's clear that it's just like there's something just a little bit off here, and like maybe that's where his expiring contract comes into play here, right? Like he's just the one that I think we need to see stuff. Like I can go through this roster, Evan. And I think everybody else almost, I can kind of explain to you what I think their role is going to be. And like what it probably looks like. I can't do that with Karis LeVert right now. I can't really envision what it looks like.
I can somewhat. I think if you're going to use him as like a supercharged six-man where you just let him have the ball in his hands a lot. But again, I would rather give those minutes to Donovan Mitchell in that sense where like you let him lead the bench units a little bit and let him just play point Don instead. And you just kind of roll with that and see what you have, because clearly Karis LeVert's like not. Yes, he's part of your plans for this immediate future, but I don't know if he's a part of your long-term plans right now. So obviously you plan for your future at the same time, but I can't visualize it either. But maybe it is using him as a supercharged six-man where you're just saying, okay, Karis, we're just going to put the ball in your hands for a lot of possessions and let you get as many shots up as you can because you're going to kind of carry the flow of this offense and relieve some of the pressure that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland face on a nightly basis so that they can take possessions off and kind of just rest a little bit in between spots, or especially if they're maybe either busting their humps on offense or if Donovan Mitchell does step up on defense and do it there too. So
here's my one follow-up of this before we get out of here. What does that look like if he starts? And like how do you
LeVert?
Like so let's say he starts. Is he how that looks like if he starts? It's almost like easier to me to see it working with him. It's like, okay, last year they really wanted to try to make him and Garland sort of a thing that worked. Does it make sense to have him like does he like start and just like cut and stuff, and then like when Garland gets to go off ball a little bit to relieve some pressure off him when he plays with Garland from a spacing perspective? Like, what does it look like defensively? And like, or if he's not gonna, like, when does he sub off? Like, I'm a little perplexed is strong. I'm curious to see just sort of what like the function of him is, because it's like, I think like the whole point of getting Donovan Mitchell in part is to like turn the offense over to Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. And to let Darius Garland do stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And Karis LeVert does function somewhat as an off-ball player, but he functions better with the ball in his hands.
No, he doesn't. I don't think he really does function as an off-ball. Like, he's not a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter.
That's why I said somewhat functions as an off-ball player, and he's better off just having the ball in his hands on possessions. And that's really where my argument for Isaac Okoro to start comes in, because Okoro can be a low-usage wing where you have 4 guys who are looking to score over him, and Okoro gets you 8 to 10 points. I feel like you're just not really utilizing Karis LeVert's toolkit properly if you're just saying, like, okay, Karis, you're only going to get a handful of shots in the starting lineup and maybe some featured offensive lineups too when Donovan and Mitchell and Darius Garland are sharing the floor with you. But I feel like there's just more creative ways to do it, and it's going to be a question I have for a while, because it's not going to get solved in camp, it's not going to get solved in preseason, and it's not going to get solved early into the regular season unless the Cavs find like a clear-cut answer at the 3 spot somehow, some way before the season starts. It's going to be just really uncertain what they do there.
Dylan Windler just like comes out of the grave.
Dude,
and it's
you
like,
wrote
all
Dylan
right.
Windler is dead, so
I wrote Dylan Windler is dead last
in the lineup
of the 14. Yeah. So,
no,
Dylan Windler just comes out and is just like, I'm back, baby. Let's go.
No, he's just like that WWE GIF.
Yeah, I think it's the Undertaker.
It's the Undertaker when he comes out of the casket. It's just Dylan Windler just one day at the sidelines. He just stares at the press box at us. I feel a shiver just go down my spine.
Well, is he still wearing the SpongeBob Kyries? It will be my question.
I hope not, man. Those things are a collector's item.
But if they make him happy, they make you happy, you know?
Well, I guess so. If when you're a millionaire at the end of the day, you can afford novelty shoes to play basketball in.
I digress. All right. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens. Again, we're going to be back tomorrow doing a Donovan Mitchell season preview. We're going to kind of do a 2-part one of these. So we'll have Andy Bailey on next week to talk about Donovan Mitchell. We're also just going to do our own Donovan Mitchell preview and kind of look at what his role is going to look like, some of the questions we have, and that'll kind of be we'll kick our series off with Mitchell since he's the newest, biggest fun addition. We hope you tune in for that. Now, thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen. You need another listen. First, Locked On Guardians. Guardians are coming right now. Go check out Jeff Ellis. Locked On Browns is always a delight. But now go ahead and make NBA Top 50 on Locked On NBA your second listen. Which NBA player moves the betting lines the most this season? Locked On and the BetOnline odds makers present the NBA Top 50 most valuable players. Find it on the Locked On NBA feed wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. The Wednesday edition of this, so you're listening to this on Thursday, but yesterday's the 21st. Darius Garland was featured in there, and there's some more Cavs obviously coming up, and two more Cavs, I believe, are coming up later this week in that. So check that out. I'm Chris. That's Evan. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you have not already. We'll talk to you tomorrow.